Ron,
Okay. For those of you just joining us live, we just spent the last 10 minutes going over the district safety plan. It's an annual presentation that we do put on. I will let you know that we will be putting this up on the school website. If you have, it will be up there for 30 days for any public comment. It's a basic overview of our district-wide safety plan. It certainly doesn't get into specifics. Our building level plans get into more of those specifics. So that will be up for 30 days following this meeting, and then the board will act on it in September. Thank you.
I just had one question.
Yes.
As of right now, the arrival and dismissal, in particular the elementary school, is going to remain the same?
We don't know. Honestly, and I, it's a great question, but we don't know fully what school. Right now, I'd like to, we'd like to say, we're going to go back to normal operations, but normal might be qualified. It might be somewhere in between what we had to do last year and what we typically do. However, it really depends. What's going to drive that is how many kids can we put on a school bus. I will say last year, our parents were outstanding bringing kids in. It helped us a lot. And we couldn't have done what we did without parents doing that. They were very patient, and we, I think in day one, those of you who were in that line for probably 45 minutes at worst for some of you, if you weren't in the front of the line, we got that down under 12 to 15 minutes every day, and it went pretty smoothly. But a lot's going to be determined on how many kids we can put on a school bus. Once we get kids in school, how close can we have them? Are they going to be some of the same parameters that we had from April on, that when we brought all kids back? That we don't know.
Okay. Do we have a timeline of when we will know?
I'd love to say our plan is to, right now, our goal would be is our school is going to open as normal, with everybody coming back. If we have certain safety parameters, protocols that we have to put in place, we'll put those in place. That would be our goal, and say that our mode of instruction is going to be come back for live and in-person instruction. That's what we would like to do. That can all change when we get any guidance from which I'm sure we're going to get, and I hope it's not the last week in August.
The goal for live and in-person instruction, does that include masks or face shields?
Again, that's going to be determined by our local Department of Health. I know the CDC came out with a recommendation today, I believe, or at least I heard it on the news today, stating that all kids, all people coming back in, especially inside, vaccinated or unvaccinated, they're recommended that you wear masks. But we don't typically take sometimes the state will adopt the CDC guidelines. Other times they adopt their own guidelines, and those are typically what we would end up adopting and having to go in school. I don't know if it's going to be a mandate or if it's going to be a local decision. And I wish I could tell you we're going to know that tomorrow, next week, in 2 weeks. I don't know. And it's no fun trying to prepare for a new school year without that information. But when we get it, we will try to put together our plan the best we can, and certainly do what we feel is safe for our kids and staff to be here. If you would, I forgot to state this, or I'll let Dawn, take over the meeting here.
Yeah. So we'll move on for public to be heard. Just want to remind everyone that the chat room feature is available. So if you have any questions or comments at all during the meeting, please go ahead and send them in, and we will get to them. And for the public to be heard, if you could just make sure you state your name for the record for Marie, that would be great, and try to limit your comments to 5 minutes if we've got a lot of people who want to speak tonight. So this gentleman here, there was a lady behind you, whoever wants to go first.
My name is Raymond Judley. I was in school, so 2 of my daughters come into high school. Just 2 comments. With the mask thing, I just hope that the school board, if it's left up to you and you only get recommendations and no mandates, that they take into consideration the history or the facts with the transmission rates within schools. Not look at an overall transmission rate outside with everybody else, or nursing homes, specifically the facts as they relate to schools and the transmission between students and faculty, which from what I've read is lower than out in the general. Okay. The second thing I'd like to mention is, I think it was brought up with the CRT aspect, which I read they changed the name to CST or something like, or CSN or something, which is basically putting lipstick on a pig, in my opinion. Okay, I read that thing. I didn't read it all through it because it gave me a headache, to be honest with you. Some of the things that concerned me were the goal of having staff train students to be agents of change, cultural change. As somebody who kind of likes this country, I took offense to that. They're not very specific. I think that children should be sent to school to learn how to read, write, arithmetic, sciences, stuff like that. Teach them to be little soldiers that you send out for whatever political purpose that they have in this curriculum. I've kind of found repugnant, to be honest with you. Okay, there was a great many things in that disturbed me. One of them was the assumption or presumption that our school districts are systemically racist. Well, I would like to think that if they were, people such as yourself would have noticed this by now and done something about it. I hadn't heard about this before, so I'll have to assume that that's not present. And I don't think the school should be wasting their time presenting things to students that aren't present in the schools that they go to. And I also object to teaching kids that people are inherently oppressed, oppressors, what are based on the color of their skin. I raised 3 daughters to believe that you do not judge people by the color of their skin, and then to find out this curriculum is going to tell them no, exactly the opposite. You're going to judge everybody by the color of their skin. That's how you can start out. And I really found that to be something that's totally unacceptable in my view. It's something I taught my children it was unacceptable, and they seem to grasp that from a young age. How adults can't grasp that, I don't know. Okay, but it was very concerning to me. Okay, and I'm going to try to read more on that because, like I said, I couldn't get through the whole thing. But I would hope that, given the opportunity to select what in there you have to and what is optional, that anything that is optional that would be, offensive to anybody who actually likes America or is not a racist, go for it. Okay, and that's why I say thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you. Okay, any other public to be heard? Oh, this lady right here. Yes.
My name is Courtney Deepar. I just similar to what he had mentioned. I don't know if you are going to be advocating for us as a community as a whole for having our children have to wear masks at school. I do feel it should be an option as a family. I understand there's personal issues or reasons for why you would or would not. But I also have done a lot of research on my own, and it's statistically proven that there is a very low chance of children transmitting this to other people. And very low chances, if they do get COVID, that they're going to be seriously ill or die. I know personally my children have come home when they have been put on a quarantine, and one of my daughters was crying because my one daughter was on quarantine and she said people died of COVID. So that concerns me as a parent, and having them put a mask over their face all day long makes me very sad. So I just want to say, from a parent coming into this, it's been a very stressful year for everyone and for the children. I know you guys have done a great job, and I do applaud you because I have my other clients from other districts, it's been a mess, and I do think we have done an amazing job as a community as a whole here. But I do hope that you would advocate for us as parents and as for our children, that we do have a choice in this.
Thank you.
And it kind of goes on to the question that I had, Ronnie said, Ms. Wheeler said something about guidance and recommendations. Well, and maybe you Tammy can answer it. What decisions are made at a local level versus a county level versus a state level versus a federal level? You know, and that's, I guess, if we had the choice of being, we might be different because Sauquoit decides they're not gonna math their kids. They're not gonna teach this, that this gentleman was talking about. I don't know where those decisions are made, and I'm just kind of wondering.
Yeah, we all.
And I don't think anybody knows where those decisions are made, because we're not in the school district.
Right. Typically, as I stated earlier, especially in regards to any health and safety mandates, so we'll talk about masks. So if if the CDC makes a recommendation, we don't just say, okay, CDC says that that's what we're going to do, because what's happened, and a lot of times I've certainly had parents contact me when that comes out. I have staff contact me when that comes out, and usually you've gotten letters from me or direct you to the website to say, hey, here's the guidance that we're following, or I know this guidance may have come out from CDC, but we will not react to that until we get specific guidance from either the state or the local level. I'll tell you, from the local Department of Health, typically it's deferred to whatever the state is doing, typically, unless there's some other mandate that they feel, hey, we're going to take the lead on this and make this. So to answer your question, if it's something to say, this is what you have to do in order to operate in person, and we had many of those things. If you're going to do this, these are the things you have to have in place. You know, we couldn't get all kids back here at the beginning of the school year. We could do it in the elementary school because we could meet the requirements of 6 feet with kids and staff wearing masks. We could separate those. We couldn't in the other buildings, hence we had to do the hybrid approach. Those rules changed. Our state, now that also, those rules changed, I think, earlier in the spring, but our state didn't adopt them until closer to April. And after April break, we brought everybody back. So that's typically the flow of the guidance and the mandates and what we end up putting into place. And then to Courtney's question, you know, will we have a local decision? If we're given a local decision, then yes, we would be able to make a local decision. So will they come down and say, this is recommended, but local districts can do what they feel is best for their districts? And then it may end up being a local decision where we get to do that. In some cases, we've been forced to do that, and that can put us in a difficult spot too. You know, if some, you know, sometimes it's like, you know, what is the district next door or 2 districts over doing? Why can they do it? Why aren't we doing this? Or why is Sauquoit doing this and others not doing these kind of things? So you get into some of that certain communities, you know, will adopt different things. But for the most part, if it comes down as a mandate, that's what we're supposed to follow in order to operate school. And that's what I believe we have to do. If there's a local opportunity to make a local decision, we can entertain that at that time as well. But right now I wish I had answers for you. I wish I could say we're not wearing masks. I can't tell you that we are. I can't tell you that we're not. I can't tell you how we're going to open school in September. I can only tell you what I hope we can do at this point.
Will you be an advocate though? Like, if we ask, if a community in whole comes together and says, like, if it is some kind of like a fight that we have to fight for this, do we have support? I guess that's what we want to know too.
I think, you know, to come out and say, yeah, we're going to support you. No, we're not going to support you. You know, we will have to, obviously, for something like this, we're going to have to get, you know, what the community sense is on this. There may be people feeling very strongly, as you are here tonight, about not wearing masks. There may be people that feel very strongly that you should wear masks. And then we'd have to certainly entertain that, weigh that, and then make a decision from that point.
When we have to follow the...
Please, hold on, let's just identify yourself first and then go.
Okay, Cheryl. Just for, I think some of the confusion too is like for we have to follow like the CDC and the Department of Health and all of that, or Governor Cuomo and everyone. Like, where does it say like you have to follow their suggestions and recommendations in order to operate? Like, how come? I think we're just feeling frustrated with the lack of like family input, I guess, or choice. Yeah. Like, you know what I mean? I think like a lot of people I talk to say, they're not sure if we're supposed to listen to the governor or the Department of Health or the CDC, because we never really seem on the same page anyways. So, like, what would make it not operate? Like, I think that's the part that kind of confuses me, and if we can kind of come together as a community and figure something out, because I know we're reaching out and getting signatures as far as, what families and residents feel that they want their child to be masked, because it's becoming quite an issue with a lot of families that I speak to, and along with, kids that I talk to as well. I don't know exactly the right words to say, I guess, because it's just, I know a lot of parents are feeling frustrated
And they
because
don't know where to go.
where to go at this point, because like Courtney said, the transmission is so low. If you look at the actual statistics and science of it all with children, so how come everyone's going about day to day and all of a sudden school starts and the kids have to be masked? And it's so important at every age, especially, the younger kids who are working on their speech, who are working on socializing, and, again, at every age, but more so,
We're very aware of that. Again, all I can do is reiterate, I get it. What's been very frustrating, and it's been consistent, is CDC comes out with something or the governor comes out with something and everybody reacts to the governor. And I think the one thing we have been consistent and steadfast on is we don't react until the Department of Health puts out a statement stating what we have to do or what's recommended to do. And if there is an opportunity or an option, then we have to entertain that and make a decision on a local level how we might take that recommendation.
But if the Department of Labor says you have to wear a mask, we have no choice in the matter at that point.
I believe if you plan on operating school in a certain way and to do that requires you to wear masks, that's my understanding of what is a mandate.
What happens if we don't? Sorry, Robin Sullivan. I think that was the.
Name again?
Robin Sullivan.
Sullivan, okay.
I think that was more towards what the question was if they come out with these mandates and the community and parents are saying, no, we don't want our kids wearing masks anymore. At what point is the school gonna say, okay, I'm on the parent side of this instead of following the government and the mandates?
And it is the Oneida County Department of Health, Josh Sullivan, Robin's husband, correct? That's what we're referring to when you say Department of Health.
Generally, the state, the county has deferred in most cases to what the state has come passed down, but yes.
Okay. Yeah.
My name's Michelle Crow. First, I just want to make a statement. Like, my fourth grader had a moving up ceremony, and she had made a comment she said at the end of the year, she said, my teacher is so pretty, I've never seen her face other than online. And that was so sad that she went through the whole year and never ever seen her teacher's face. Second, what if we all send our kids to school with no masks, even though you say masks? Are you going to suspend every single one?
I don't have an answer. Yeah, you could, obviously you can do whatever you want. We may have to do what we have to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that
the
is.
consequences
So,
would be.
right.
And,
The
face shields are not going to happen, right?
We hope not, but again, yeah, we just had face shields on the bus. I know that was, again, there was no roadmap for this, and I'm not going to defend Department of Health, CDC, or anybody, but I know they're trying to come up with what they feel are safe. None of this is a convenience. You make a great point that we didn't get to see people's faces until, at certain times when maybe we could take masks off, but for the better part, we couldn't see the students' full faces either.
Also, what's going to happen with snow days this year? There's not going to be virtual learning during snow day?
Snow days will be snow days.
I think when everybody's consensus there, I think that they think that the school, you guys did a great job last year, because last year was a new year for everybody.
Yeah.
Right? Everybody was involved, us as parents, you as teachers, administrators, school boards, everybody. But now we're a year ahead. There's vaccines that are out. So opinions on that, I'll be reserved for times. But I think everybody just everybody's just venting a little bit of their frustration. I think that everybody can kind of see what's coming down the pipe, whether we all want to admit or not, with the recommendation today from the CDC. and there's variant that coming out, and the next variant is coming out, and the one after that, and the one after that. I just don't see it ever ending.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So when do we, as a community, make a stand and say, no more?
Like the
No.
brothers got to send their kids without masks.
You know what I mean? I think that's where I'm speaking for,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean,
maybe I'm not sure, maybe I should sugarcoat a little bit more, but I don't know how to really do that. You know what I mean?
No, I
I'm
understand.
not trying to come off as
No,
argumentative by any means, I just think that.
not taking it as such.
Right,
Yeah,
we're
right,
just-
right.
Target's not, I don't.
Yeah, it's
Nope.
not you.
No,
You just
no.
have to take it out.
No, I understand, that's why I'm here.
You make my question about local control, I
Yeah.
think that if it's a mandate, well, that's one thing. If it's a guideline or recommendations, well, you know, that's where we want to say, all right, your guideline, thank you very much, but this is what we're doing.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna come to
And
that.
that may be, that may be our option, and that may be
Set
what,
the
what,
politics
what.
aside and look at put human, the human aspect back into it, right?
Right.
We're the community here. Our children go here,
Mhm.
this is us.
Yep.
So give it back to us, what we're trying to say.
Josh,
Josh,
Thank you.
Nathan, I want to steer the conversation back to the beginning. The first question was answered. I'm not sure what term, whether they're using for instruction and curriculum, whether they're using critical race theory or the pamphlet that I guess was disseminated, the 64-page culturally responsive sustaining education framework. That's the
Yep.
one you've been looking at?
Yes.
Okay. It's not mandated, if I'm correct, right? It's not mandated the Department of Ed to teach this or to incorporate this, right? Anybody know about that? They were discussed it last board meeting.
Right.
Last board meeting. So I believe it's not mandated.
Yeah, there's not a,
It has not been adopted.
this hasn't been adopted certainly by this, the state had, right, Board of Regents hasn't adopted and say this is a mandate and this must be the curriculum. They're asking us, here's the initiative, and they're asking districts to look into this and how they can fold it into what they're
Or
doing
not folded
currently.
in at all.
Yeah.
Right.
In my opinion. So, nice name for it. However, it's nothing more than political ideology
Theory.
being inserted into our heads of the children. We shouldn't have bias and political ideology put in kids' heads. Period. It's understood. In addition, I remember Mr. Sacco asked how many of the board members had a chance to look at any of that stuff. And I think everybody said, well, I haven't. I got a copy of it about 3 days ago. I went through it. Out of the 64 pages, most of them are half pages with colorful illustrations on it, and then a couple paragraphs of verbiage in there. Then there's references to sources. Well, I went through it and read it openly and then critically. Race is referred to 28 times. Justice is referred to 15 times. Social is referred to 45 times in this paperwork. Aging, 13 times. Racial, different than race, racial, 37 times. Change, 12 times. Privilege, what do you think it's associated with? I'll leave that to be. 16 times. 11 times the word change followed social. Social is listed 45 times in there. This has nothing to do with education, period. We have educators that sit on the board. We have educators that are in this room. Some of us are married to educators. I remember when the purpose of a school was to teach reading, writing, language skill sets, math, trades, science. I can remember quite vividly, recently, even our governor has come out in support of STEM. Can somebody tell me what STEM stands for? Right. There's a big STEM initiative in New York State. Why is that? Because there's a shortage in the economy in the world for the workforce that we're trying to prepare the kids for in college. We're trying to prepare our kids for. Now, back in December 2013, launched the scholarship to encourage top high school students to pursue STEM careers in New York. He also launched a master's educator program a couple years ago, scholarship and consortium for teachers, top STEM teachers in New York State. They've also launched additional STEMs to encourage women and females in STEM. More than 800 teachers in New York State are leaders in the STEM industry. That is the push. That is where we should be concentrating our resources, not on wasting our time on this socially responsible, whatever they want to dress it up as. It's not necessary. Again, teaching, that's what our teachers do best. That's what we hire them, that's what we trust the board to do with that. And going back to that 64-page document, I also looked at some of the references of some of the authors and thought people they quote in there. Well, in quite a few of them, it says, one of the references, when restorative justice in school works. That's one of the people they're citing for this article. Another one, how to practice restorative justice in schools. I can keep going on and on. There's about 5 or 6 of them in the references that they use about restorative justice in our school systems. Hence the word agents and agents of change and social activists. That's not what a school system should be. Again, if this is not something that's mandated by the state, if they're asking you to look at it and possibly fold it into the curriculum, I vehemently oppose it. And I'll use every resource I have at my disposal to oppose it. And I would expect anybody who's a teacher or educator in this room to think about that. We have a great community. We have great teachers. I interact professionally. I interact in sports with the students and the staff. I interact academically with them, and I have for years. We have a beautiful school system here. Our teachers have enough being put on their plate. And if we have to go back to masking and stuff of that nature, there's going to be more resources that the teachers and time they're going to have to expend on that. This, if you haven't looked at it, look at it. If you haven't, look at it and see what it's about. But I would not entertain this, and I would not ask my staff to entertain any bit of this. I think we have a great system that we have here, and we have trust in the community, and we do not want to erode that trust. Thank you.
Any other additional? Thank
Just
you
have
very
one quick
much.
thing.
Sure, just your name, sir.
My name is Rick Stanek. If they do mandate masks and we don't abide by it, like say the school district, but what happens? They cut your funding? Is that what it is?
We don't know. Honestly, I mean, if I'm expected to follow a mandate, then I would say I'm expected to follow a mandate. If we don't, then I think we're subject to whatever consequences come our way.
Because they said that people would get arrested. Nobody got arrested, so. There was never a law about wearing masks. It said it was a county law.
Call flag.
Yeah.
But never.
Right.
Ricky,
Smoke and mirrors.
what I could say is, it's a situation, it's a position the school doesn't want to be in. As everyone has spoken, you support the school, we support you. But those decisions are being made by individuals 90 miles away from us. And it's, you know, we go back to several years ago with the testing, you know, the implementation of testing, the implementation of the Common Core. That didn't divide school districts, thank God, because we united. But when those decisions reached us, they had already been made as recommendations, and unfortunately, in some cases, they were adopted by the Board of Regents. So what I'm saying is, I respect everything that I've heard tonight, but before that's being forced on us to follow through with, we've got to stop the train 90 miles away. And unfortunately, I mean, I think that word is traveling throughout the state, but if procedures are enacted and adopted in Albany, and then told to Ron Wheelock and the Board of Education, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to admit to you, our hands are tied. We've got to stop that there.
But what if we come together as a community and say no more, we have had enough, and we've put 2 school years into this, and we've done all the things, and we've gone through all of the rules, and we followed in a straight line what we had to do. What if we all come together and we say no more, and we're gonna set precedents, and we're gonna be the people that everyone are gonna look at, but maybe they're gonna follow us. Like, what, why can't we be those people?
That's pretty exciting.
You gotta think it's all of them.
We could, Courtney,
can, as a
Courtney.
whole.
Courtney, we could do that,
Yes.
but the state will have the last say in that. You know what I'm saying? I mean, as Ricky said, will they stop our funding? I don't know. We don't want to go there though, is what I'm trying to say. I agree with what you're saying and we can unify, but our battle has to be told to the people that are
But if
making the
enough
decisions.
Districts see what we're doing, and enough districts in our state do the same, maybe they don't have to say anymore.
I don't know.
We've never been here
Right,
before.
right,
We're all
right.
just doing our best.
So anything's possible,
We're all
absolutely.
I
just
know.
trying to figure it out.
I know.
And I think a lot of it too is we absolutely 100% respect and admire you guys for all that you've done for our children and for the school district. But I think what the main consensus on this side of the room is that we're gonna have your support when those meetings do come and it comes down the chute and they say, this is recommended, that one of you guys stand up and say, hey, my parents aren't gonna go for this, so we're not gonna do it.
Sauquoit says no.
I think
And if it
that's
comes down
kind
to
of what.
funding, what happens if we all withhold our school taxes or New York taxes? You know what I mean?
Well, easy there.
Has there been
I'm not going to jail.
All right, we're losing control here.
Yep.
Yeah, all right. Mr. Hannah, did you have another question?
Yeah, I think to bring that to a close.
Yeah.
I think what the community is asking in regards to the mask and mandates, there are any, is that, has there been any effort on behalf of the school boards, plural, other school boards or superintendents, reaching out to other superintendents to be proactive or to use Mr. Nicotera's term, to get ahead of the train and say, listen, get on the phone with New Hartford, get on the phone with Whitesboro. Let's start getting some of the folks in the county together on this. And let's give our input on what we think should be done based upon our community input. And you take that out there to your county executive, to your legislators, who then take it to Albany. I think that's what the community is asking us. Have you done anything proactive?
We've tried at the local level last year and did not have much success. I'll leave it at that.
I think now moving forward, it might be a better chance just because where we're at.
I think a lot more. people
Pandemic.
look at it.
I think, well, again, last year
Yes,
was,
you know,
last year nobody knew. Well, you know,
Right.
I mean, it's really, so everybody from legislators, everywhere was like, we don't know what the hell this is, we gotta figure it out, right? I mean, now I think we've gotten a year and a half into it. I think they got it I think they got it figured out. You know, I mean, so that's why I think it's a different scenario this year than last year. That's my opinion.
Thank you.
Clearly heard. Thank you. No, I
Thank you.
appreciate you coming out and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, we'll,
And I do feel this is the tip of the iceberg from everybody I've talked to in the community.
Right.
I really expected this to be a full house, to be told, from everybody I've talked to.
well, if it doesn't in the future, we'll relocate to a larger room and try to at least keep some space, and try to continue to be mindful of the world around us still, but yes, we would certainly relocate if we have to.
Just to turn back around, my name's Dave Shirello, with the curriculum that this gentleman was talking about. Is that being considered in the school district right now? I'm not familiar with it, and if so, are we able to disseminate that to the families to go over that and kind of get an idea as to what's going to be taught to our kids?
That would happen. We had some discussion at our last meeting regarding this, and there's a lot to it. As you listen, some people have read it at length, read it to some degree, whatever. And we understand there's going to be various opinions on how people interpret what's in that document. There's a lot there. We do have to build our understanding of it. And then, so build our capacity, I guess, with our knowledge of what that's going. But I also said, this is something I think we need to be very deliberate on. And we're not going to jump to conclusions and say, all right, this is the direction we're going to go, only to then realize we have to change direction. So, as far as a pace of how we're attacking this, it's going to be very deliberate. Right now, like we said, there's not a deadline of saying you have to have this in place by this point in time. But, you know, as we continue to gain more understanding, more direction, and more, you know, what we can do, what we cannot do, what we shouldn't do, what we should do, you know, those discussions can certainly happen as we continue to gain more knowledge on this. And we're doing that right now as school districts, as superintendents, trying to get our arms around more of this. There's certainly been a lot of information that's been pushed out by the state, but nothing, you know, saying this is exactly what you have to do. So we're still in that kind of that building that knowledge and understanding of really what's being asked here, and then how might it apply to our district is, I think, as we've shared here is, you know, are there pieces of this that should be applied into just normal classroom instruction? As far as curriculum, you know, we have state standards we're expected to teach to. Those are still in place, and that's what we teach. That's what we'll continue to teach until those standards are changed and we're mandated to teach different standards. But that's what's currently in place, and that's what's mandated to be taught.
So that comes from the state, that comes from Albany.
Those learning standards. Oh, okay, this document?
Yeah, the 62 pages.
Yes.
So they have that.
Yep.
And where's it from there? It trickles each school district, they figure out how to put this in your curriculum, or it's like.
Yep.
Where can you obtain that?
What's that?
Where can you obtain that curriculum, that material?
That document?
Yeah.
Online at the state ed website.
And Mr. Wheeler, usually there's public hearings, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're normally, David, they're normal, procedurally, when state ed comes out with changes or potential adoption, there are hearings throughout the state. And I know years ago they had them I know there was a public hearing for all area schools, but one was held at Whitesboro.
Yeah.
There were 3 in our area.
That was.
Yes, remember that
Yeah.
name?
Oh,
Yeah.
good.
And those rooms were packed with people. And the Commissioner of Education come up and he talked about the proposal and the possible changes. So-
Excuse me, Commissioner King.
Yes.
At that meeting, you had Anthony Verdissi and you had Griffo.
Yeah.
Were the panel.
Yeah. There were 3, I believe, during that school year. Nothing had come into play yet, but there were 3 hearings of the proposed changes. So unless something changes, I don't think we're gonna open schools saying A, B, and C are gonna have to happen.
Right.
Hopefully, there's gonna be a year of awareness and some type of transition that the public can respond to. And that's a perfect opportunity because the people making those recommendations, should be the people that are there.
And what, again, that goes back to being proactive. As this has come down from you as possibly, it's not mandated, as we know. And as you said at the last meeting, it wasn't mandated. So what has been the response from the superintendent consortium of the county, or even from our superintendent here? What has been the response in regards to this?
My response is what I just shared, is that there's certainly a lot of information. We all have to build our understanding and knowledge of what's being presented there. And I think, yes, and you have to be very deliberate. I think in our approach, as far as anything that might be adopted or amended or instituted into our curriculum. And certainly we would get our administrators on board, our staff on board with this stuff. We haven't gotten to that. What's that?
I think it'd be hard for the teachers to add more of their plate because the teachers are constantly talking about how much they're trying to meet the goals for testing, the goals for the state mandates are there. This is just another thing that to try to lop on top of that.
And that's always something we take into consideration when we're looking at different initiatives that come down, whether they're mandated or not mandated.
And being that that's not mandated as of now, is the plan to implement that this school year?
I have no concerted plan right now on how we will go forward with that. And I think to go back with your question as far as local superintendents, we've had some discussion on that. I do anticipate us having that in the very near future. A little more discussion on at least a regional look at this thing or this initiative. But as far as having a plan in place to say by September, we're going to do this, by October, we're going to do this and that, we have not devised a plan, to do that, to implement anything. As I said, We have our learning standards that we're expected to teach, and that's our current curriculum, and that's what we will continue to teach at
Right,
this
how
time.
does that fit into the learning standards?
What's that?
If it doesn't meet the learning standards, wouldn't there be something that, should be taken under consideration? If this doesn't meet the standards, why would our boards or our superintendents even, consider it, implementing it? Or taking into consideration, if it doesn't meet the
Right,
standards?
there's standards that need to be taught, and then there's, well, I guess without getting into a whole lot of details with it, I understand that these aren't specific learning standards. They're things that they're looking to see that you bring into your classroom as you're teaching those standards. So it's on a basic level, and I've read the document, and I know it gets much deeper than that, and I know it can get to people having different theories as far as how it's interpreted. And certainly, I respect people's perspective on it. We all have to read it and have our own perspectives on it. However, some of the tenets in there, speak of, encouraging student engagement, student growth, and student achievement by engaging critical thinking skills, getting involved in your education, certainly having.
It's already being done.
That's not
Hold
just,
on, hold on.
Okay.
it's, like I said, they just put lipstick on
B,
it.
C, and D, and this is-
It may be, and absolutely. A lot of this is already being done, and I think that's also part, as we take a deeper look. Where are we on this scale of what's
But if we're
being
doing 80%,
suggested?
we're already doing, and then there's 20% that is total nonsense. It shouldn't be taught in school to our kids. People come back with, oh yeah, but the majority of it is, they wish my sugarcoat this stuff. I'm too old for that nonsense. Okay?
Understood.
Because you gotta interpret it. White people are oppressors. People of color are the oppressed. Period. That's the way you start. How is that not racist? You can sit there and say, well, I interpreted. That's all nonsense. You're telling our kids, if they're white, they're racist, and if they're black, they're victims. That's how they start. Like I said, I spent my whole life with my kids telling them, you don't judge people like that. You don't do that. Now they're gonna come to school and they're gonna have the authority figure tell them, oh, absolutely you do. And if you don't go along with it, you'll be punished academically. And like it or not, this building is where their academic future starts. Because when they go to college, that's what they're looking at here. And to have a teacher or teachers that takes it upon themselves to get a kid and beat them down, and they're punished because of their political views or because they won't go along with the program. So you're gonna punish somebody for the rest of their life because they don't want to be indoctrinated into a particular political view. And you have a couple of them here, and you know it. I'm not gonna mention names, because I'm not gonna go there. But everybody's aware, if you've been around this district for a dozen years or so, okay? And nobody wants their kids punished because of their political views or refusing to adopt somebody else's political view. You know what I mean?
Teach kids the skills they need and let them become who they're gonna be as people. It's fair.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Is the universal pre-K gonna open? The letter that we got sent home, for my son, who should be going into universal pre-K, stated that they didn't know if they were gonna have space in the school because they didn't know about the CDC guidelines as far as social distancing. So they didn't know, not only were they gonna be allowed to have universal pre-K at Sauquoit School, but how many students they were allowed to take in. So at that point, they had given us numbers for each of our children that were drawn out of a hat. And for example, my son is number 6, so if they're allowed to have 6 or more students in the class, then he gets to be in. So I was just wondering if any decisions have been made on whether or not that is gonna happen.
We haven't made any decisions to say they can't come here. And they're an independent contractor that performs preschool. We don't run that preschool. But I'm not aware of, we haven't said you can't come here. We had space last year. We'll have space again this year we're planning on them being here. So if there's something that Small Blessings Preschool knows that I don't know, I can't speak to that at this point.
Thank you. Any other, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Am I allowed to speak?
Sure.
Oh, okay. My name is Judy, and this is only my second time at a board meeting as a member. And I'm so glad that all the parents are here. Thank you very much for all of your opinions, because your children are our future, and this is why we're here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ron, are we good? I don't want to miss anybody or anybody. Thank you so much, everyone. Do we have any questions or comments in the chat room?
Not in the chat room, no.
Okay, super. All right. So now we'll move on for students to be heard.
They were invited out.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, yes, they're allowed, yes, I'd love to see students come and be involved, that's great, we encourage that. So I'll just pause for a minute just to double check to see if we have anything in the chat room or any.
Nothing in the chat.
Okay. All right, next then we'll move on to Board of Education Subcommittee reports.
No subcommittee reports.
Okay, next we'll move on to Superintendent's report.
Okay, I have a few items in superintendent's report. First being tax collection. Last year, we did not allow people into the building to pay taxes in person. I think we allowed them as far as in between the vestibule doors. And if they were paying in cash, then somebody would take their cash. Correct me if I'm wrong, Charlie, but so they didn't actually come into the building, go to the business office and pay in cash or pay with a check. If it was cash, they came between the two doors. Otherwise, there's a drop box outside the school where if somebody wants to come in person and actually put their check into the drop box, they can. Otherwise, they can mail it into the school. So we're looking to continue that approach that we started last year and do that going forward here in the future. So I just wanted to share that with the board. Basically, share it. Also get your, I guess, approval or okay, or have any discussion on it that you may have.
I think it worked
I
well.
was just gonna say, I
Okay.
think it worked well. We didn't have any negative, Charlie?
Sure.
One comment, Ron, we're planning on not having a person at the front window at all. We're having drop
Okay.
box or mail in. And if somebody needs to or wants to bring cash in, then they will call the tax collector to make arrangements. So she
Okay.
won't sit there for 2 hours.
Right.
3 days a week, you know.
Okay.
It was useful the first couple of days of September and the end of the month, the end of October. But other than that, there's a lot of time she was sitting there and she could do some work, but not all of her work. So
Yeah.
I'd like to limit anybody that wants to pay in person, face to face, that they contact ahead of time, and we'll put that on the tax bills. So
Okay.
that's a little change, if that's okay with the board.
Okay. The second item, capital project update, I sent to the board this spreadsheet. I know it's a fine print, but basically I can highlight our next capital project that we're looking to do. And again, it's nice to have community here as well to hear this. As you know, we finished our last capital project, which some of the big staples of that was obviously our new auditorium, the band and choir room being renovated, the addition of a transportation office, a new fitness facility, and a lot of other infrastructure kind of things. This project doesn't have some of that mass appeal that obviously an auditorium or some major room changes or addition has. This one is mostly infrastructure kind of stuff. Stuff that has reached the end of its useful life or is nearing the end of its useful life, and it's time to fix it to try to keep our school district's infrastructure as strong as possible. Some of those items including a lot of flooring work, especially in the elementary. We did have plans, at least alternate plans to do that in our last project. Just a quick summary on projects. You kind of have your scope, you put your items in there, you kind of prioritize that scope, you put it out for bid with the hopes that you're going to be able to do everything that you've asked to do. Some things get listed as alternates in the event that we're not sure we're going to be able to do that, but if there's monies left over, the bids came in better than we thought, or things have transpired better than we thought in the project and at a lower cost during the project, some of those alternates we can now bring into play. Well, some of those things we weren't able to bring into play in the last project. A couple of those major items would have been a lot of flooring in the elementary school, and elevator, kind of renovating our elevators. We currently have an elevator that's out of service in the elementary school that we've approved as a capital outlay project that we did in the last vote to address that issue. But then we have the rest of the elevators. We have 2 that are in the elementary, 2 in the high school, 1 in the middle school. Those have been used a lot and have been around for a long time, and they need to be overhauled. So that was, again, something that was in the last project and we weren't able to include it. So we are looking to include it as a priority item in this project. We're also looking to do some repointing of our buildings. We have some work here at the high school, and we have a lot of work kind of on the back side of the elementary school that needs some brick repointing. Other things that we have here. Looking to renovate our middle school and high school boys and girls locker rooms. Try to maybe bring those a little more into the 21st century. Use some of the space in there that's being used up for showers that don't often get used, and turn them into changing areas. So we're looking to do that with both the high school and middle school. And we have some heating, ventilation stuff that we need to do to renovate on some of our buildings. And then certainly the last but not least is up at the stadium. That turf was put in 2006. It usually has a life expectancy of anywhere from 12 to maybe 13, 14 years. So we're looking to replace that turf and also replace or resurface our track. Again, that kind of has a shelf life of both of them getting beat up with the weather, the elements living in the Northeast, the use that we've got. I'll tell you that stadium has gotten tremendous use since we put it in. It's great to get on a field, use it for 2 hours and get right on it with another team, use it for 2 hours and get on it the next day, use it for 4 hours, and you don't have to worry about a muddy mess because rain came and hit. We did have some drainage issues early on with that field that were addressed, and we feel have worked themselves out. It's been an asset to our district, being landlocked, not being able to have a lot of natural grass fields to do that. It's really been a great multiple use field for many of our teams to use. So, but like anything that gets wore down, it'll start to. It's held up very well, and we still have to look. This capital project won't start until. Our hope is, and also another major piece of this is roofing. With any project, there's probably going to be some roofing. You don't ever replace all your roofs at the same time. So we have some roofing work scheduled. The whole roof at the middle school has to be replaced. Some small area on the elementary school, a few areas here at the high school, and then an area on the bus garage as well that will be replaced. But that's basically the gist of the capital project that we have.
I want to support the stadium, because I was sitting there like last month where you are. And I used to say, why do we need to do a stadium? Well, my daughter graduated 8th grade and we went out and took photos on the stadium. And I'm like, we need one. Like if you see it and walk on it, it's time for a new stadium. Because I would say, well, why do you need to spend money on a stadium? Things like that. And then when I went out there and looked at it, I'm like, yeah, we need it.
Well, one thing, the state won't reimburse or won't give us our full aid on it if we haven't had it for 15 years or used it for 15 years. So we've checked that box, and it has held up very well. But yes, like with anything, it's going to continue to wear down. Even though it's a synthetic surface, it's got rubber infill. That too will get compacted just like soil will. We do drag it and try to fluff it up on a routine basis. We do annual testing on it to make sure the kind of you drop a ball that's supposed to bounce up a certain height for compaction to make sure it's not too hard of a surface. And there's some things you can do to try to mitigate that. But at some point in time, no matter all the mitigation you do, you're not going to be able to do that. But I will say, and it went through open heart procedure because that turf wasn't 2 years old, and we took contractors took a handsaw to it and opened up the turf to dig drainage to put in trench drains to try to help with some of the flow of the water that just wasn't getting to our outside drainage areas fast enough, and we were getting ponding on the field. So that field has been through a lot, and it's held up extremely well, but as Mike says, it's, we're approaching the end of that useful life, and it would be time to get changed. If we don't do it now, we're talking another 5, 6, 7 years that we would have to get out of that, and I think we would be stretching that too far. But Nate?
So the state's gonna, what, provide matching funds? How's the financing?
So right now, we are about 89%, we get building aid and 89 cents on the dollar for all approved aidable expenses. So some expenses aren't aidable, but when we build a project, we try to build them so that they are aidable. So if we were to put this in 5 years ago, we probably would have gotten some aid on it, but not their max aid, or maybe no aid at all. So,
So if the bill's $1 million, about between 800 and 890 of it's gonna be reimbursed?
will be reimbursed by the state, correct?
So that's not out of the taxpayer, it's not additional levy?
We're trying to build this project, correct? We're trying to build this project so that it'll basically, here's what our tax line kind of looks like, and keep it stable.
Okay.
Yep,
I support it.
and right. We're trying to avoid certainly peaks, but we're also trying to avoid, valleys, because at some point, if you go in a valley, you got to come back out of it, and that makes taxes go back up again. So.
Does the board ever, when we look at use of life of equipment or anything, do we set up any type of a sinking fund or pre-funding of a project? Where we look at something and say, okay, we know we're gonna get about 10 years out of this, and in 10 years from now, we know that this is not gonna qualify for state aid or state funding. So a certain percentage of our budget is gonna go X amount of dollars every year is gonna go into this pre-fund. It's called a pre-fund. Your pre-fund, I don't know if the schools can do that.
So what it's called here is a capital reserve fund.
And it can only reach a certain amount, is that what happens?
There are, I think, certain thresholds of how high you get. There's certain requirements on how you establish that. That would need voter approval to establish that fund. But the only way to establish that fund is to have excess funds,
Right.
unexpended funds, and we don't have a lot of that.
And then one other question, because this more, it's inquisitive, because when I lived in Florida, I worked closely with the school system, actually school system down there, our metro government, so the county. So you don't have a Sauquoit, Utica, New York, it's all metro. It's all one superintendent, a couple regions, but great budgeting, resource allocation. One of the things I noticed when I was down there is that the athletic directors at the schools were very proactive with local businesses in the community and the county for projects or for anything. They wanted uniforms, they wanted equipment. They would approach business and ask, hey, would you mind helping support our school here? Even though we're a county school, it'd be the same thing. Support go out. Has that ever been thought of? Where we go out in the private sector and obtain funds from the private sector as gifts and grants for sponsorship of our stuff? Because that's a very big untapped resource that we have.
I don't know how big of a resource locally we have of untapped businesses. I mean, we don't have.
Quite right here
Right,
now.
right.
But the same thing when you apply for grants or something of that nature, there's companies that do that, major companies, Fortune 500 companies that you write a proposal, you submit it, you aim for the sky. 7 times, 6 times out of 10, they're gonna give you something for it. So it requires some effort, but once that mechanism is in place, it's just cut and paste, put a different name, address, title in there, and you send it out. Just, again, outside the box.
No, I understand. Understood.
Nathan, we do some of that, indirectly through the Sauquoit Foundation. And the money, 90% of the money comes back to the school district, but not specifically for athletics.
Right, I don't mean, I'm just saying anything of that.
Right.
I have a couple of what Mr. Stacko said. I got excited when you said that about resurfacing the field, because I think it used by the community, and I think a good, nice facility brings us a little bit of sense of pride to the area when you have nice facilities. And maybe I'm a little biased in that because of my background and whatnot, but it's kind of like when people see a university, the first thing to look at is athletics. They the left fields. You know what I mean? So
Or other fields get used all the time.
yeah, right.
Mhm.
So I think it's a great.
I think it's the best bang for the buck they get,
Yeah.
besides education.
Yeah. Agreed. That's what we're here for.
Thank you.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
Basically, any questions from the board? I do have,
I have one, Mr.
Yes.
Wheelock. I shared, a parent shared a concern with me, and I looked at it, and I think it's legitimate. We're doing work on the tennis courts, right? We're gonna,
on a court, yes.
on a
yes.
court.
Yeah,
Okay, and I wasn't aware of this, but in the last project, we paved from this parking lot all the way down to the bleacher if you want to watch your son or daughter at a tennis match. So it's paved, but you got to park in this parking lot. And she told me, she says, Tony, 90% of the people that go to a tennis match park in the middle school side parking lot.
Mhm.
But that path only goes down where the players can go into the gate, and then the parents got to come across at that time, it was nothing but sitting mud and water to get to the bleachers. So you understand what I'm saying?
right. A lot of our parents just sit on the side hill right off the end of the
Yes.
elementary.
But we paved the longest way and the shortest way. There's still, I don't even know, from the end of the corner of the tennis court to the bleachers, all open grass and mud in the spring. And when I went down there, it was legitimate. So I told her we'd bring it up with the architect.
Okay.
Not to say we made a mistake. If you
Right,
park in this
right,
parking lot,
right.
you've got a dry walkway.
The-
But it's easier to park in the other parking lot because you walk a shorter distance.
Right, I think the intent of this walkway at the end of this building was to get access, because there was no walkway to that soccer field, soccer practice.
Right.
Baseball, softball field. So we took out the grassy knoll and put in a pavement. The intention wasn't to say that's where tennis needs to park and walk over. Tennis, like I said, we don't get a ton of people there. I mean, mostly, the parents of the players, and that's pretty much it. And they will either watch from their cars, watch from a chair, sit on the rail and watch, or sit on the side hill and watch down. I don't see a lot go to the bleachers, but it is available for them to go. And obviously, if they have to go on grass and
Maybe
it's
that's
been
why
raining a lot,
They don't go to the bleachers, you know, walk
I
in the
understand.
mud.
I
don't know.
understand, yeah.
I thought it was legitimate.
Well, one of the things, I know it wasn't on this chart, but I do want to be sure that I do share it here is at the last board meeting, or a board meeting, it was brought up that a walking path to the lower middle school soccer softball field. So I did have them put it in here as a placeholder. It's about $135,000 to come up with some path to link us down to that lower soccer field as opposed to walking down that steep grass hill to it. I know a lot of people will watch from up above, but when we do have fans and we can maybe sit closer together, we do have bleachers right behind the softball field for people to come in and watch. There is actually a hard path, dry access, if you walk all the way around the middle school. But I know that was brought to our attention to consider that. I asked them to put it in here. So the reason I bring that up is we're looking, the one question was, is there going to be impact on our taxes? To keep our taxes basically where they are, no additional impact on our taxes with this project, we basically could spend somewhere between 10 million, 10.5 million. And right now we're approaching the 10.6 to 10.8 range, I think. So at some point we will have to sit down and then kind of condense this and say, this is our priority. These are the things that must get done. These are the things that let's get done if we can. And these, if wish items to say, hey, if we have extra, we'd like to do this, but they're not the highest priority, to try to make sure we stay within that cap. So I think, I'm certainly going to want the board to consider looking at this and weigh in on some things. If I say we have to whittle down, or we may make some suggestions for you to consider as we look at the scope of this project. But again, a lot of it is just infrastructure stuff, not that great appeal that or a great attention getter that the auditorium is going to get, positive or negative. But so that's kind of the basis of this project. So as a segue into, I'm going to have Charlie talk about an energy performance contract, because another piece of this project is upgrading our lighting in the district, try to convert it to LED lighting to help with some energy savings. An upfront cost certainly, but then certainly residual savings as we go forward with the cost, the amount of electricity that an LED uses and the lifespan of those. we think that's a way to go. The only thing we have to make a decision on is, do we want to include it in this project, or do we want to include it in an energy performance contract project? Both of those will have pretty much the same impact on the cost of this project. So with that said, I'll let Charlie speak to the energy performance contract for lighting.
Thanks, Ron. I put a couple of documents in front of you. We had a automation. There are a number of performance contracting vendors out there. Day is one of them that our architects have worked with. Just to give you just to read at your convenience, I'll concentrate more on one with numbers because that's what I do, I guess. But an energy performance contract is something the state's allowed for better than 30 years now, and it basically is they allow you to do capital improvements that will result in energy savings as long as those energy savings can result in a payback of 18 years or less. So if it's a $1.8 million project, it's got to have $100,000 savings per year, using simple numbers. Over 18 years, you get that $1.8 million back. They don't require the community to vote on it, but then a few years later, they did say, well, if you want, they enhanced some of the building aid ratios, and if you do want to get the enhanced 10%, then it does require that the community vote on the energy performance contract as well. So Ron said our aid ratio right now is about 89%. On this sheet here, you can see one of the numbers. They have our aid ratio at 78.5%. The financial information, that middle block, building aid ratio 78.5%. So they did these calculations based on no community vote. If we do decide to go with an energy performance contract, if the board does decide to go that route, our thinking would be that we would do the capital project vote looking at probably sometime in December, and there would be a separate referendum to approve the energy performance contract, which would just allow for the additional 10% of building aid on it. Completely separate. As Ron said, we're looking to change out all of our lighting with LED lighting throughout the district. Day Automation came in, they took a look at our energy bills. They're about $203,000 a year for the electricity and natural gas usage. They proposed a project of $1,279,000. Again, very preliminary at this point in time. They basically said, what we can do, $1,279,000. We'll replace your lights, soup to nuts. We come in, they work with the architects. It's a turnkey operation. We don't have to do anything. We don't do any borrowing for it. At the end of it, after they've done all the work, we would enter into a lease with a separate company to pay that $1.28 million back over a 15 to 18 year period. The cost of replacing some of the lightings in the list that Ron gave you, I think, is about $850,000. When we asked the architects to look at the lighting replacement, we asked them to look at just those common areas, the gymnasium, the hallways, the library, places where they're on constantly. This would be a replacement of every single light and lamp within the school district. So there's some of the reason for the increase from the $850,000 to the $1,279,000. The other thing is, they do this and they do garner a profit from it. So there is some profit for them. They come in, they do all of that work, and they promise us the savings. You will realize some energy savings. In the middle part here, they've got energy first year energy costs $203,000. They estimate about a 22% savings in energy once the lamps are replaced. So in the first year, that's about $45,000. They also believe that once they've replaced all those lamp lights, that LED lights would not need to be replaced, and they've got a stipulated number of 26,000. So these are just estimates at this time, but all in all, they do what they need to get to a savings to realize the payback of 18 years. Benefits of doing it this way is once you sign an agreement with a energy performance company, they take it all from there. If we were to do it ourselves, we would still have to work with our architects to design the work. We would have to clerk it, and it would probably be delayed at least 1 year. if we could do it through an energy performance contract, we would look to do it in the summer of '22. It would not necessarily be data automation. There would have to be an RFP process. A company or companies would have to come and present to the board, and then the board would decide, is this a direction they want to go in? Is there a company that they want to pick from those that present to them? Or do they want to leave it in the capital project and let us deal with it, as part of the capital project? So, if there are questions, this is very preliminary. I think at the next meeting, we're hoping to have Data Automation come in and give a formal presentation, which they've already done to Ron and myself and Steve Parker, to give you a better understanding of what they can do for us. And if the decision by the board would be to go forward with an EPC, then the next step would be to do a formal RFP process and have one or more companies come in and present and make a decision of whether or not they want to go with the EPC. Did I miss anything, Ron?
I think that's it.
Any questions?
Is there an advantage to put it in the project or not?
The advantage is there's no profit for this third, this ESCO, Energy Service Company. The advantage of using them sometimes is if a district doesn't have a project or doesn't have the opportunity to do a capital project, then you can do this without voter approval. We would always want voter approval, just because it gives you the same building aid ratio as a capital project. So it gives that added 10%. The biggest advantages are everything's in their hands. When it's done, it's turned over to us and everything's done. We don't have to clerk it. We don't have to work with the architects in the design phase. We don't, it will be done a year sooner. And that's not a huge advantage, but I think what right now in my mind anyway, if this capital project is approved by the community in December, roofs would happen next summer. Perhaps this lighting could, if it were an EPC, and then the summer of '23 would be the rest of the project with the turf field, the elevator work, the HVAC work, the flooring work, and all that stuff. So this would kind of break it up a little bit more.
Which makes sense.
It makes sense in that respect, yes. There is that profit margin that the EPC company will get, So just black and white would be cheapest way to do it would be capital project. You do all the work, you get all the money. This way, there's going to be a little profit. There's going to be profit for them. I don't know what it is, but everything is turned over to them. It's a turnkey. Everything gets done. I've done one in my lifetime in the late '90s, and it worked very well. I will say that. But, it's a decision for the board to make whether they want to have an EPC company come in to present initially, get more information on it, and after that, make a decision whether or not to go with include it in the capital project or do the EPC. And if the decision would be to do an EPC, then there would be a formal RFP process to have other companies at least have the opportunity to come and approach the board and make their presentation. Questions?
So is the board good with us bringing in Day to speak at the next meeting?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah, I would
Okay.
too. Yeah, I'd be interested, yeah.
Make a note of that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And whatever the cost is, they're saving us money, so they're,
In the end, it will be paid back in full within 18 years, yeah. And lighting is a very easy one, I guess, or a very cost-effective one for them. You save an awful lot with a new LED lighting. So schools that don't have LED lights, I think that if they are going through a capital project, almost everybody's doing it through an energy performance contract over the next few years.
thank you.
Thanks, Charlie.
And that's it for superintendent's report.
We don't have anything under old business.
Nope.
New business, I'll read 9.1 to 9.19 as a consent agenda. If anyone has any questions, comments, or would like anything pulled for further discussion, please let me know. 9.1 is permanent appointment laborer. 9.2, a permanent appointment nurse. 9.3, appointment of substitute bus monitor. 9.4, retirement. 9.5, appointment of substitute bus driver. 9.6, appointment of school counselor. 9.7, appointment of reading teacher. 9.8, approval of the sale of surplus vehicles. 9.9, adopt the revised code of conduct for the 2021-2022 school year. 9.10, immunization service agreement. 9.11, approval of agreement, BOCES cooperative bidding agreement. 9.12, approval of BOCES annual service AS7 contract. 9.13, approval of agreement with Upstate Cerebral Palsy for the 2021-2022 school year. 9.14, approval of agreement, School Special Patrol Officer Initiative. 9.15, approval of lease agreement with Upstate Cerebral Palsy. 9.16, Treasurer's Report of Balances, June 30th, 2021. 9.17, approval of minutes of the July 6th, 2021 meeting. 9.18, resolution authorizing payment of bills approved by the claims auditor dated July 15th, 2021. And 9.19 is Committee on Special Education Recommendations. Does anyone have any questions, comments, or would like anything pulled for further discussion?
How about 9.4?
9.4, Tony? Want that pulled?
Yeah, just
Okay,
to make
no
a
problem.
comment.
Yeah, sure, no problem. Okay. Then I will need a motion to approve 9.1 to 9.19 with the exclusion of 9.4.
So,
Tony?
Ron,
Ron? Second? Ron?
Tony.
Tony
And
and
then
Ron?
Ron.
Yep,
Yep.
you got it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. I will need a motion to open discussion on 9.4.
so moved.
Tony, I'll need a second. Judy? Okay. Tony, go ahead.
I'd just like to commend Wally. Wally was a bus driver in our neighborhood for years, and again, we're losing a great man. I'm glad he's coming back as a sub, and very friendly and very likable and nice sense of security.
Yeah.
With that traditional wave on the dashboard, I don't know what it was.
See bus 6, wasn't he bus 6?
I don't even
Yeah,
know.
my kids.
Yeah, he gives you a wave like
I
this.
think so.
He's the kids are gonna miss him. There's no doubt about it.
No, I certainly echo what Tony said and commend, his commitment and his dependability and reliability. I mean, he was here every day, and naturally there's, something might come up and he can't work, but you can pretty much count on Wally being here and doing the job. And it was a tough decision for him because he still has some private work he does on his own on the outside as well. And, but that's the decision he's had to make. And as Tony said, and I'll make this pitch, we need bus drivers. So if you're interested in driving a bus, please give us a holler here at school, and we'll get you set up, we'll get you trained, and get you in. We can probably get a bus route for you. So thank you, Tony. Thank you, Wally.
That's all I had, Don.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other discussion on 9.4 before we vote? Okay, then. All those in favor to approve 9.4?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passed. Okay, next we'll move on to item 10. I'll be taking a roll call vote. Item 10 is emergency project resolution. Before we vote, would anybody have any questions? I can open for discussion, comments? No? Okay, we're good. All right. I'll need a motion to approve item 10. Tony, second.
Second.
Mike? Okay. And I'll read everyone's name if you could just, I'm sorry, Ron, am I going too fast?
Nope,
I know
I
you're.
got you. I got
Okay.
you.
All right. All right. First is Mrs. Miller. I'm a yes. Next is Mr. Nicotera.
Yes.
Good night, folks. Thank you. Yes.
Good night, Don.
Good night. Next is Mr. Patelli.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry, Ron.
Nope.
We had a yes for.
Yep.
Yep, you got it. All right. Next is Ms. Kentile. Yes. And the last is Mr. Sacco.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Ma'am. Okay. All right then. Next, we'll move on to miscellaneous topics. Very quiet this evening. Yeah. had a very long public to be heard session. Okay. All right, if no one has any other miscellaneous topics, we'll move back on for public to be heard.
Okay, I do
I
have,
was just gonna
I
ask,
do
do you
have
have
one
anything?
online.
Super, great.
Jennifer, thank you for being patient. We have Jennifer Shepherd here. A couple of questions. I understand things may change moving forward, but at this point, will all spectators be allowed at fall sports, or will it be capped? I don't have an answer for that at this time. We anticipate there may be guidance. If we don't have guidance, then I would say we would probably move forward and run our athletics as normal as possible. So, and that would include allowing spectators to come in, but we do anticipate there may be some guidance in regards to that. She also asked, Mrs. Shepherd, do we know if the middle and high schools will be able to use their lockers this year? Again, we're not sure what might come down the pipe as far as physical distancing and spacing. Last year, we didn't allow the use of lockers to try to prevent congregations in the hallway. A little bit more by not having kids stop at lockers in between class periods. At this time, we're not sure what it will look like for the start of the school year, but certainly as we get information or guidance from the state that may direct us in what we can do, and then we'll apply the best safety protocols that we feel we can put in place. We'll do that. So that may include using lockers, it may not include using lockers, but we don't know at this point in time. And you're not late. We're just late running in the meeting. So Jennifer, thank you for your comments on that. That's all I have in the chat room.
You had another question, sir?
I did know the locker thing was brought up. I just would like to make a comment that a lot of the students, especially the girls, I give my girls a ride back and forth. Sometimes their friends are with me. One of the common things I heard was them with their back. My girls are 5 foot nothing or 10 pounds. With the amount of books that they love around, just something to consider when you're considering that is that especially in the freshmen, sophomores, the smaller kids, really had a hard time with that issue. So that's what.
Point well taken, and that's the reason why we encourage them to go to lockers in between periods, or maybe not every period, but to try to, so that they're not carrying their day on their backpack all day long. We understand that, and we understand this, went against that line of thinking. So, but hopefully we can have a little bit, we can be a little more lenient on that.
And I just wanted to make a comment, just kind of a kudos. I know in the spring we were limited with how many spectators we could have at our sporting events, but Mr. Jones did a phenomenal job, and there was always a table set up, and we did contact tracing, and it was a game in every event that I attended. So I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Jones. And I'm hoping, if that is the situation, that he did a phenomenal job coordinating that. So I just wanted to shout out to Doug. All right. Any other public to be heard? Any other questions, comments in the chat room?
No.
Okay, then. Well, we're good. All right. So then we will move on. I will need a motion to go into executive session then for negotiations at 8:40.
So moved.
Tony, need a second, please. Mike? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Okay.
Charlie?
Thank you so much.
Hit the line back. Thank you. Thank you. Have a good night.